Peace.
Peace, y'all.
Knowledge born. What's the science, baby?
What's happening, fam? L.A.R movement still moving. Subscribe or die trying. What's happening, fam? L.A.R movement still moving. Subscribe or die trying. Appreciate you, Big Duke, for the intro. Always love it. I always love it. Thank you very much. Now, this is about quote unquote critical race theory, right? So I just got back in town today. I was in New Orleans, back to the home. Went to a wedding. It was great. Salute to my family for getting married. So, but part of this came about because of that. And there's this talk about why people are tripping about critical race theory. And people who have commented on it in my comment section a time or two. I'm really not really a big, I'm not a big fan of the term critical race theory and how people are using it. But basically, it's American history is for dummies with black history, with black history in America. But there's this pushback at it. And I find that part interesting. Not necessarily critical race theory itself, but what I find interesting about it is all of the pushback. And I have to ask why. Like, what is your issue with this type of stuff? So going back home, one of the things that comes first and foremost to mind is if you put critical race theory, or basically, how racism affects all of America and how it affected America in play, you might have to change a few things. Like you might have to change some names and some monuments. Like when they had the lady who spray painted the monument of the black guy because they got rid of the white guy. And she had an issue with that, right? She defaced it. Now, New Orleans in particular. New Orleans is like the first place to start taking down the monuments, right? But also, there was a school, there a lot of schools was named McDonough. And for anybody who knows anything about New Orleans, 35 is a high school, McDonough 35. That's one of the bigger high school names in New Orleans. 35. They call it 35 because McDonough had a lot of schools. So McDonough basically, I think before he died or after he died, he donated a lot of money to Louisiana school system and the school system in New Orleans. Excuse me for a second. I'm drinking water. I'm thirsty. So what he did was he donated a lot of cash to build up the school system for educational purposes. Hold up. But what people forgot about was his history. And basically he had a racist history. If I'm not mistaken, he was like a slave owner, inherited the money from slavery or whatever, something like that. So that's where he got a lot of his money is dealt with race. So what they had to do recently, in the last few years, they took McDonough's name off of everything because of the implications of knowing, man, how are we going to send these kids to school? And these schools are named after people who, will probably try to own them, beat them, rape them, blah, 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 blah. And the city had to deal with that. You had to change names of streets. One of the streets was I want to say Robert E. Lee. They had to change the name of the street recently, and people were fighting about, man, can't we just keep the name, keep the street? And it's one of those my heritage arguments, and people like, nah, Playboy, your heritage is a little too trifling. We can't do that. We just can't go about it that way. So I'm like, okay, it's part of the issue with critical race theory, the fact that when you deal with a bunch of American cities in particular, not just the states, but the cities, when you flush out the history of the things that you named after people, you're gonna, and the monuments you erected for people, you might have to take them down because it's kind of like a history Me Too movement in a sense that people are scared that's going to happen. And I can see why they're pushing back against that because all of these quote unquote great American heroes ain't so great. And they definitely not heroes. So this pushes to another aspect because that happened with the educational system in itself. So here's the second part. People have no problems teaching critical race theory when it comes to white people in America, and that's the issue. Like, you can say why white people are great when you have history and world history is European history. In America, and it's just white history, and a small sliver of this, black people, Martin Luther King, and maybe a soldier, the Crispus Attucks or something like that. But you're not gonna go into the nuance of the situation. We fought the Civil War to free the slaves, and then you get older. No, we didn't. So you get into that space where the schools have an issue, about what the schools teach. And that becomes one big clusterfuck. Because at the end of the day, when I'm talking about the historical part of what's going on in the school system, you got to ask the question. You remember when the school system had no problem saying that slaves were immigrants like a few years ago? They used the Texas book system to push out to the students that, hey, slavery wasn't real. These were immigrants who came here and just happened to work for free. So you had no problem teaching that in a book, but all of a sudden, now you got a problem teaching what actually happened in a book. And, black people push back against the immigrants thing. And now you see like white people pushing back against the critical race thing. And it's like, because your kids don't want to feel less than, or you don't want your kids to feel less than, and you don't want your kids to know, I guess, history and of since we're in a quote unquote melting pot, you gotta understand, how everything in the pot melted in the first place, right? Or how is it that we came to be what we are? Since we all are equal and we all have the same opportunities, we all can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and we all are equal in the eyes of the law, and we all have the same head start as everybody. And the reason I brought up the McDonough thing about the schools is because McDonough was Irish. McDonough is an Irish name. So when you hear the story, the thing about, Irish people were slaves too in America. So basically, you didn't say, Irish people were slave owners in America too, did you? You didn't say that Irish people, benefited from the racism and slavery to the point that they could get rich off of it also. You didn't say that part. So that's what's interesting to me about critical race theory is that you can teach one, but you can't teach the other. Right? What's going on, fam? I ain't forgot. Just so you know. So this is where we're at with this first part of it, or the second part of it actually. So you're gonna teach what type of history you gonna teach? You know what I'm saying? Like, and now people have this big issue. To me, it's not that big of an issue though. You know, which brings me to my pushback part. What exactly are you parents pushing back against? Exactly. Like, what are you pushing back against? Because remember, it started like with the Megyn Kelly thing. I think that was Megyn Kelly talking about. No, it can't have been Megyn. Yeah, I think it was Megyn Kelly talking about she didn't want her kids to get taught this in schools and this, that, and the third. And like, what are you actually pushing back against? Seriously, you don't want your kids to learn what? What exactly? Because at the end of the day, what I find weird is you're comfortable with your kid learning to lie because everybody who's ever been to school, and this has nothing to do with race, this just has something to do with the educational system. Everybody, when they learn American history in school, by the time they get to college age, they come to find out that the vast majority of what they learned about American history is a lie or a half truth. So, what is the issue with just telling the true story from the beginning? What are parents pushing back against? George Washington did not tell a lie. He did not tell a lie. He chopped down a cherry tree. George Washington was a slave owner who yanked, who had false teeth, and to get them false teeth dentures, he yanked them out of the mouths of slaves to make his own little dentures to get put in. So, is that cool? Like we good with that, right? He's a good person. He didn't lie about that. So what are the parents pushing back against? The parents want Thomas Jefferson was one of the founding fathers and he helped write the Declaration of Independence. Not exactly. Not exactly. And Thomas Jefferson was a pedophile, and all y'all want to talk about R. Kelly, but y'all don't talk about Thomas Jefferson. So you would have to bring up that conversation in the household, or you pushing back against something like that? You know, what are you pushing back against? Specifically, like, are you pushing back against the idea of civil rights, of affirmative action, of redlining, of you know, stealing intellectual properties when people invented stuff and they were black and they couldn't get credit for it because of race, like what are you actually pushing back on? Because you don't want your kids to feel like they're an oppressor, but they're kids. But are you pushing back on the fact that your kids might look at you a different way? Because if we go with the lie, these children can look at their parents like, "Oh man, that's good. That's good job, Dad. Good job, Mom. You're just doing the best you can." Or are you afraid these kids gonna look at your parents and be like, "You really ain't do nothing," you know? He said, Andre said, he keep it on the down low. Andre, you off the chain for that. You know, so what are you pushing? What are you pushing back against? You don't want your son or your daughter to say, "Did we get to this point? We worked hard in our family, and we started from nothing, and we had nothing, and we're a family of hardworking people who never ever did anything that harmed anybody." And then you come to find out, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Because remember, Grandpa blah 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 said he did this, this, this. How does this tie into that? Did Grandpa work for the FBI? For COINTELPRO? Did Grandpa work for the FBI? You know, when they made all of these crazy laws, does Grandpa know anything about, tapping Martin Luther King's phone? That type of thing. You said we were in construction. You know. What do you think was happening? Is it prejudice is natural? I'm not talking about prejudice. I'm talking about critical race theory. You know, to prejudge somebody, yeah, I get all that, but it ain't prejudice. You know, slavery wasn't prejudice. Redlining isn't prejudice. You know, uh, um, what is that lending? The bad lending that people had a few 10 years ago. Subprime mortgages wasn't prejudice. That was predatory. For a reason. So that's like is that my question is that what the parents want to push back against? You feel me? Like, is that the issue? Like, yo, we can't have this scenario. You know, what's going on, woman of the past? Like, we can't have that. I can't tell you this, that, and the third. Which brings me to another issue, right? Where I gotta ask the question about quote unquote critical race theory that's interesting to me is it's not just a racial thing as far as black and white. Are people pushing back against because I saw the Asian people, somebody in the Asian community called it a scam or a sham or it's not real or whatever, and a hustle in a sense. And I had to think about it, and one of the other YouTubers, Your World, Your View, or Your World, My View, it used to be Harvey Superboy 223. He brought up a good point about are people pushing back against critical race theory because you're going to find out there was no racial coalition between black people and other people who weren't black. You know, no problem, fam. Like, when people say the Asians built the railroads, they're not going to really say, you know, if the Asian, and I brought this up a long time ago, if the Asians built the railroads, how come they made a Disney story John Henry? You get what I'm saying? Which which was a spin on a true story of what was going on with black men back in that day when the railroads were getting built. I'm not saying that Asians didn't build part of the railroad system because they did, but it had changed the whole dynamic of people's actual contribution to America. You know what I'm saying? It had changed the whole dynamic. No, Becky, they need to start it early. They start that lie early. People, you know, this ain't. It's just like we're gonna break these kids' hearts like Santa Claus. Huh? American history got to be like Santa Claus. It's something that needs to be taught when you can accept your parents for lying to you all these years. It's not American history no more. It's like the Easter Bunny. That's what that's the other thing about it. To me, even with the coalition part, it delegitimizes American history because you're telling people they can't handle complex ideas. But what you're basically saying is from 5 years old to 18, I gotta lie to you about everything except math and science. Everything else got to be a lie. 1 second. Sorry about that. So that interests me because when I get back to the coalitions, you got to think about the critical race theory, and people act like if you are of another race, nobody is saying critical race theory is just, I guess a black thing. Won't you tell your experience in America? And this is why I say we probably have no coalitions because it's going to change the dynamic. If white people want to have critical race theory for white people, we assume that that's American, looked at as American history. We need patriotism so we can get we don't know. Is it just America doesn't has a bad past and a bad present. I'm sorry, but that's what it is. It's just any human being that goes to the point where you got to say something like, "But we're getting better," means that that's not true. It doesn't take. It don't take 400 years to get better. It really doesn't. Well, we're just gonna get better one day at a time. You need another 50 years to actually act like we got some sense. That's like I think part of the issue is, and part of the no coalition part of quote unquote critical race theory that'll be found out is basically that we have to accept everybody for who they are historically. It changes the dynamic of stereotypes. That's what I like. Personally, I think that's that's an underlying issue that it changes critical race theory. As far as the coalition, it changes the dynamic of stereotypes because you can say that, it changes the dynamic of Native Americans if they write their history themselves to be from their interpretations. It changes the dynamics of America if Asians write theirs from their own perspective. It changes the dynamic of America if Hispanics write theirs from their own perspective. You get what I'm saying? Because the quote unquote theory is just a person's perspective from the non-white perspective, but it also changed the dynamic of people, trying to take credit for things that they couldn't, because you got to dissect the theory itself. You got to see if it's not even a theory really, it's just American history, but you got to accept the idea itself. You know, it's a coordination of hard work to change things. You know, perseverance and discipline. I get it. You know, and it's kind of weird to me, like what Becky was talking about, we need patriotism so we can not get taken over by Russia or China. I appreciate you for making that comment, or any other nation. And I think this is part of the issue with, what's interesting about critical race theory. America is a country that was stolen. It was taken over by people who stole it from other people. And now we need to have patriotism so somebody doesn't steal it from the people who stole it. And the only problem with that is, honestly, like, Russia's white people, China's Asian people. Now, the interesting thing about that is most of those groups, they only mess with black people about trying to take over stuff. They don't mess with other white people like that. So that's what's interesting. A woman of the past over there sounded like Mel Gibson and William Wallace. Oh, they don't take our freedom. So that's the interesting thing. It's a stolen country that somebody says, we're not going to steal. Well, technically, the country is over. If you can't fix this financial problem, there is no country, because somebody else owns it. It's for sale. What's up, Millennial Black? I said, I ain't into that. Where would you be? God bless America. Would you rather be anywhere else in the world? I don't care about none of that right now. I really don't. You know, even if you're, so it's interesting. Like, for me, it's kind of one of those things where, let's see what these other people have to say about their experience. And I think, one of the problems with people having their own, writing down their own American experience is possibly the fact that one of the things that united this country was racism. That's what united whites with Irish and Italians who weren't considered white. That's what united, that group, even with Asians and Hispanics from time to time, is the fact that, hey, you ain't black. That's partially what united Native Americans. Well, at least we ain't black. So part of that is, if you write it from other people's perspective, if they write from their own perspectives, that part that shows we ain't got no coalition is going to exist, and people don't want to talk about that part. But people want us as black people to go out and still be, hey, we need to fight for everybody. We need to fight for women, and we need to fight for people of color, and we need to fight for, the LGBT community. And it's like, shut up. Fight for yourself. So that's a whole nother story about it. Now, the other thing about, like, no coalitions and the parenting thing, right? I'm trying to figure out one important thing. One important thing about this. Here's where critical race theory puts a highlight on American racism. I'm sorry, Becky. I ain't mean to keep that up there this long. My apologies. My apologies to you. me, my bad. Uh, you're basically trying to ban free speech because it's not white. You get what I'm saying? Like, how often do you hear somebody wanting something, wanting history being spoken in America to be banned? Freedom of speech, freedom of press, until we talking about this. So the First Amendment doesn't really apply when we talking about race. So fundamentally speaking, it's like, this is why we have an issue in this country. Because something as simple as that, you take the he kneeled for the flag thing to another level, and now this, you want it banned. You want it banned. And people go, oh my goodness. Like, so now we gotta go, wait. Because nobody brings up the fact that this is freedom of speech we talking about. You know, you know, we become exactly, millennial. Like, this is a problem. So when is America really America? When is America really a free country that has free speech and freedom of press? When is it? When is America a country who have your right to the Second Amendment to bear arms against a tyrannical government? When, all of these things have a racial component, basically. You know, and I agree with Millennial on that. Freedom of speech only apply if you believe what they believe. So that just, for me, that's like, for all these people to be so American, so patriotic, so God bless America, but you're on board with banning somebody's freedom of speech. Now, ironically, you don't. This is the same type of people who would say things like, you know, these people need to speak. You can't cancel everybody. You don't know what's in people's hearts. You don't know why people are saying what they're saying or doing what they're doing. You know, or steal it. So now it's like, so y'all the same people who telling people to stop being such snowflakes and social justice warriors. Basically, you're the same type of people, group of people, and then you turn right around and you say something like, you're gonna try to ban quote unquote critical race theory because you don't like it, so you banning some. It's dumb. It's just flat out dumb. You know. So I'm like, okay, this is what we doing. See, now it's like, okay. So let me take this a step further, right? You wanna, you want people want to ban it, right? Prometheus, what's up? I'm gonna have to hit him up in a few. He don't even know. He don't even know. So shout out to Solo. When you see this, I'm gonna get at you. I'm gonna get at you. So here's the thing that I gotta bring up. Just bring this up quick, fast, and in a hurry. Here's the interesting part about America. And I think part of this critical race theory that's interesting is we don't have a problem highlighting other countries' oppression of other people or other countries' negative dealings with other people. Look at what you do to your people. Look at what you do in your country. Look how you treat your citizens. But unfortunately, we got a country of snowflakes. When look at what you do to your people. Look at what you did to your people. Look how you treat your citizens. Then people have a, what you talking about? Because see, you had a Holocaust museum here before you had a Black History museum. That was in a whole other country. I don't think you didn't have a Native American history museum in this country that got national attention. I don't even know if it's one that exists, to be perfectly honest. So it's one of those things where you look at it sideways and you go, okay, so when you get to America, we can Germany was bad, you know, China bad, you know, Europe was even bad. Oh, look at those Africans, how they treat Africans. They're bad. Look at those Central and South Americans. Oh, they're bad. Look at what they do to their people. Aren't you glad to be in America? Well, we're gonna look at those Cubans. Look at how they do people in Cuba. It's like say, so we're gonna talk about since everybody else is bad for what they've done. I think if I'm not mistaken, in America, you probably did the most killing of your citizens in the same time period. You probably did the most snatching up people. Excuse me, in the same time period. You probably did the most eugenics in the same time period. You probably stolen the most property from people who pull themselves up by their bootstraps in the same time period. So basically, you know, it's all right to put it out on other people, but we're gonna act like our hands are clean. And the other part about that I got to add to that is, people don't want to talk about this country going abroad and pulling the rugs out of under other nations, and then their best and brightest and richest people coming over here like, oh, I'm getting away from my country. Oh, it was so bad. Coming to the very country that was undermining your own home country to make it the place that it was. You know, exactly, millennial, and I appreciate you put that. I'm like, yeah, it's very interesting. I can't believe I left that horrible place. Then you get to America, and it's like, oh yeah, the American government funded the people that turned your country into a war zone, and they made sure that your dictator got killed, or your leader got killed, or your president got killed, or your royal family got killed. Oh yeah, they sanctioned your country's death. Oh, they policed the oceans because America has the biggest navy in the world. It basically surpasses all other navies combined. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're not gonna travel if we don't say so. So then it's like, wait, but I'm in the greatest place in the world. Yeah, if you feel that way, I feel you. You know, exactly. So it's like all these dictators, we forget Saddam Hussein was a friend of America. So now it's like, okay, we're at that point. DJ, I feel you on that. So now we're at a particular point where you don't want to. Critical race theory is an issue, but is it an issue because you just don't like racial conversations, or is it an issue because it opens up the floodgate to the idea of what is America, which is my next talking point about, you know, Paul. Look, appreciate that, Paul. What's interesting about critical race theory? Will critical race theory change America? Would it change the country? You know what I'm saying? Because what I mean by change it is, would it change your view of everything this country is and how it came to be? Would it change your perspective on it? Would you look at it instead of with patriotism, but with the side eye? Would you look at America in a skeptical sense? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Because part of the biggest, one of the biggest things I've talked about on my channel. I started years ago talking about it, and I still talk about it from time to time to this day. Is the business models of America, and slavery became America's business model, and slavery just morphed. Racism was a business model. You know, so racism created the slavery business model, which in turn created the child labor business model, and the working with no union business model, and the animal using animals and working them to death business model. What's up, home? You know, and then you fast forward to the outsourcing, business model. Um, Feminism uses the business model of America. People don't realize it, but that's all it does. It's a group who wants something from another group and doesn't want to work for it, so they use their quote unquote leverage to get somebody to give them free stuff, and to fool you into like they earned it, they work for it. It's the same business model. Same as it's the same business model. You create a boogeyman when you're the one doing, the shenanigans, so you can profit off of it and hope everybody still keeps looking at the quote unquote boogeyman. So does it change America? And I think people don't realize how bad that this is going. I appreciate that, Prometheus. You know, so now we're at a point where it's like, okay, would it change the way you looked at, you know, because we don't even know. You can't ask 99% of America to name all 46 presidents and the ones that were previous to those. Can't nobody can't nobody tell you that. People might be able to get 20, maybe 20 to 25. You know, you think you might skip after Coolidge. You might not even know some names. I would say Coolidge is probably the most famous, lesser known name. You know what I'm saying? We'll get the ones from, say, from Nixon up. You know, you get your Nixon, you get your Carter, you get your Reagan, you get your Bush. You get what I'm saying? You get your Clinton, you get your Bush, you get your Obama, you get your Trump, you get Biden. That's 8. Then you're gonna get, George Washington, John Quincy Adams. You're gonna go Abraham Lincoln. You're gonna skip 3 and 4, 3 and 4. Well, you possibly gonna skip them. Or Andrew Jackson, you might get Andrew Jackson because he's on the bill. Or, maybe Grant. No, Grant wasn't a president. But yeah, Coolidge, yeah, it's gonna be a problem. You're gonna get Teddy Roosevelt. You gonna get Teddy. You gonna get Teddy. But Franklin D. Roosevelt. You might get FDR. This is, and you're gonna get John Kennedy because he got his head blown off. I hate to say it that way, but you're gonna get Kennedy because they always bring up Kennedy all the time. But who else you gonna get? And then you have to dig into these guys' history, their past. You know, it's an interesting thing. So, does it change America? Does it change your viewpoint? Because all this is a revamped situation of slave labor. You know, but like Becky said, JFK and he could have changed the atmosphere. Oh, you're gonna get Lyndon B. Johnson because he was right after JFK. You might, in the civil rights thing, but Lyndon B. Johnson was a racist. JFK was one of the people who promised a lot, but he didn't. But you got to ask the question, why did they try? Why did they shoot JFK? Had nothing to do. It had something to do with the banking system in America, basically. You know, and using JFK as a reference, Oh yeah, you're not going. Oh, you see that Miller? Mm-mm. James Madison, they might get Johnson. Mm-mm. Now, them three, them. I don't know about it. I don't know if they're gonna get that. So you got to ask that question, like, what would happen? What would really happen? So now it's like, is this why people are pushing back against it? And personally, I'm like, yeah, probably so. Probably so. Yeah, I'm Taft. You get Taft ain't gonna come up. Taft ain't gonna come up either. Like Taft is like a trivia question. You know, I hate to say that, but Taft is like a trivia question. Who? The only way people I might remember Taft is if they think of Laffy Taffy. What you mean? Something happened? So let's take this a extra step, because I was like, it's going to look at America different. Is the issue saying that it's kind of like the Juneteenth thing being a holiday? I'm still like, what in the world? What in the world? What's up, Ken? If if you teach critical race theory, would you then have to have created a generation that winds up growing up believing that black people deserve reparations and should be paid? Because as long as you don't teach critical race theory in school, you have a justification like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't learn that in school. I didn't know that. And the reason I got to bring that up is, remember when, what was that HBO show? The Watchmen, the little spinoff. And I guess like social media kind of went crazy when they had the bombing of the town, and it was basically a reenactment of Tulsa. And then you had white people like, that really happened in America? It's like, yeah. I mean, with all of these stories that keep coming out, same thing with the Fred Hampton story. People are like, that really happened? Like we went to those lengths in America? Like the story, uh, what is that? The show Fargo. That really happened? Yeah, that's based on a true story. The one with Chris Rock, the last season, the fourth season of Fargo. All the seasons of Fargo are based on a true story, basically. You know. So it's like, is that an issue? Same thing with Snowfall. When people look at Snowfall is based on true American events. Like, did that really happen? Yes, it did. Like, I don't understand the issue. So are we at a point where part of the issue is, at the end of the day, you don't want people to actually look at critical race theory and go, listen, man, we owe these people. You mean to tell me, you know, these people had grandparents and great grandparents who couldn't own a home because of race, or when they tried to own a home, us good Americans made sure they couldn't? It would change the difference, of people learning about. I mean, people might look at the Jewish community differently because they were part of the community. They were part of them. They had their own underground criminal organization. At the same time, they changed their names because they could be white. And at the same time, they was in the civil rights movement talking about we looking out for black folks. And at the same time, undercutting black people from owning property when they thought we were a coalition in a sense. You get what I'm saying? What's up, Dante? Hey, X, what's up, brother? What's up, brother? So it's like, it's interesting to me. It's interesting because I think American history is one of those things we overlook because we don't actually want children growing up knowing American history, because it'll change how the next generation moves into America. And I think the other thing about it is, I think what's going to wind up, and I might be wrong for saying this, I think this has to do with money in the sense as of critical race theory, just like Juneteenth popping up out of the blue, is one of those things where you got to ask yourself, is America trying to, because we black, give us the symbolism card because I'm really too broke to do anything for you, but now we're gonna tell the country the truth. It's like, I'm not buying it. Because who was that? I remember on an old Vlad TV had a post, he had an old interview with I think it was D.L. Hughley, and Vlad couldn't see black people getting reparations. Like, I don't think the country has money like that. They could just give people trillions of dollars. And then subsequently, the pandemic happened. He was like, "Yeah, I can't say that this country can't cut a check to black people because right after that they didn't cut 3 checks to the whole country. So now I can't say that they can't cut a check." And you add that to the fray that this country cuts checks, to Native Americans on a regular basis. Progressive brothers, what's happening? Yeah, exactly. They cut checks to Israel on a regular basis. They cut checks, they even cut checks to Africa from time to time. They give aid to everybody else all around the world except for the people that they screwed in the country. They give people aid to people who they screwed in the country. Same thing with you cut checks for immigrants who come to the country because you make sure they don't have to, do certain things for a certain amount of years. You know, the narrative must be maintained at all costs. uh, you know, so they cut checks everywhere, but they just don't cut checks for our particular group. And I think it's going to be an issue. It's like, hey man, this is to me a money issue. you know, that's interesting. Progressive like cutting checks. They saved the banking industry. They saved the oil industry. They saved the car industry. And it's like this is a problem. Is it cut the check? So, and I think I'm gonna add this to it because, like I said, it's about to me it's about money and capitalism. The other thing about this is people haven't taken into consideration that if you teach critical race theory, what you're going to fundamentally find out is basically what racism did is it reversed our business and STEM mindset as a race. And what I mean by that is all the from slavery to to the end of Reconstruction, right? Yeah, they saved Japan. Appreciate that, computer geek. From slavery to the end of Reconstruction, basically we were skilled, and we were able to invent and actually create businesses. We had the mind of businessmen and creators of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We had that, even from Benjamin Banneker all the way down, to for years. Let's just put it like that. If you want to go to the sisters who did the math equations to get this country to the moon, right? So what you basically did was you used race in this country to make sure we don't continue that, because all the things that they taught in school they killed in our schools. You can't learn trades in school anymore. You can't learn art in school anymore. you know you can't learn how to think in school anymore. You can't learn how to use your hands anymore. You can't learn how to invent anymore. You can't learn how to work on computers anymore. You can't learn any of these things. And they go, man, Yeah, we're gonna see. You know, I grew up. I grew up on that side of town in Illinois. Illinois is a very interesting place. The Chicago area, Chicagoland area, is an interesting place. It's one of the most racially segregated places in America, and that's what cracks me up. What's up, Kid Gravity? You know, we were talking about that yesterday with my family. It's like Chicago is one of those places where every 4 blocks you might get treated differently because of race. You know, you might be welcome one day, unwelcome the next. Welcome one block, unwelcome the next block. It's that. So getting back to the capitalism part, it's one of those scenarios where you got to start asking the question like, what exactly don't people want to know? You know, what exactly don't these people want to find out? Because you're gonna find out that people don't care. People don't care to know. Like I forgot which news show did it. I want to say it was one like Chris Cuomo was on it about housing in like Long Island or something, or some part of New Jersey when they first did the FHA loans, right? When they first did the loans, and that was the beginning of redlining and giving veterans loans. And they specifically said you can't give loans to black people for homes. And now those homes are worth hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of dollars that people got in the 50s, 60s, 70s, right? And what was interesting about it is when I think the host, because he was from the area, Hoboken, I think it was Hoboken, um, when he was talking to the older white folks about it, it's like they were like, well, like one of the old guys, like, he says, what are we gonna do with this information we told ourselves that we were hardworking people, and the reason we got here was because, you know, man, you got it, Prometheus. It's all good. But what are we gonna do with the fact that we got here not because of hard work, but because of racial injustice, basically? And now that you know that we got here, what are we gonna do about it? And the old guy said, "Oh well, nothing. We're all God's people." And I want to say it was Chris Cuomo. He was looking at the old guy like, "Wow, you knew this was going on back then. You were accessory to this. You benefited off of this, so you don't care that because you benefited off of this. This is what put food on your kid's table." And I think that is an issue with it. I think that's the issue that America is going to have to kind of face is what I brought up earlier. People don't want to accept America for what America is. We want to have these rose colored glasses about what America could be. America is never going to be the things that it could be or the things that it said it was on paper because it's a scam from the jump. And I think that is what, part of the what interests me about the critical race theory pushback is we can't accept that America is a scam from day one. It was a hustle from day. It was a criminal hustle from day one, and you can't make this ain't the Bible where you know um, Jesus gonna come along and change your name, and then you're gonna change who you are. You're gonna inevitably become a saint, even though you were a sinner at first. Y'all don't get it. You know what's passed down in this country is what's been passed down. Criminality has been passed down as history for hundreds of years. Criminality has been passed down as pride for hundreds of years. That's why people kind of look at it like, huh, we don't understand it. What's up, James? So now it's like, oh, okay, what we doing? What we doing? Now, my ultimate my last actual question about this is, why is this political in the first place? Like, why is this a political issue? Of all the things that we had going on in this country, how did this become a political issue? And it's like, why does all this, you know, what is this? Now this is a Democratic, Republican, liberal, conservative fight. And I'm like, y'all really have not, y'all, to me, when we have issues like this, one of the same things I felt about the Colin Kaepernick, people tripping on, kneeling on the flag, the same thing I felt about, I thought about, not necessarily felt, but I thought about what was that? The storming the Capitol on January 6th. It's the same thing I think about this stuff. It's like, man, y'all are so far, people are so far gone. Exactly, DJ. Y'all are so far gone that you need anything to distract you from the truth. And the truth is, America, in aspects, is a great country became a great country built on crime, and basically, you blew it. That's basically what happened. You blew it. So now you're going to talk about everything else in the world to stop it, to stop people from going, we really messed this up. We really blew this. We stole a country for free. We never paid for it, never traded for it. We worked people for free to build it up. Never paid. We never worked to build it. We never paid them to build it. We took people's inventions for free and we built corporations on it. Never paid them for it, never really worked for it. We created systems around those things to keep people employed and make people money and create generational wealth. And we cause other people to not have generational wealth at the same time. And, we didn't have to necessarily work for it or pay for it, because now people are paying interest, on stuff that we never paid for. And we effed around and blew it. Now we as a people owe, trillions and trillions of dollars to God knows who, and keep saying we're the richest country in the world. And America owes more money than Haiti owes France. And, and Europe is the same way. And the reason why I'm bringing up this point is, at the end of the day, I think it's political as a distraction, because at this particular juncture of history, I think in years to come, what's going to wind up happening is people are going to look back in historical books and go, you know what? Not only are white people barbaric and lazy, but they're incompetent. They're incompetent. You can't tell me you got this much of a head start and it wasn't the races that caught up with you. You blew it. That's what happened. You blew it. You just flat out blew it. And I think that's the part that people are going to making it political and having a hard time wrapping their heads around. It's like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. Like, you mean to tell me y'all had all of this stuff and y'all just lost it? Yeah, we just lost it. You mean to tell me, when it comes to race, you can't give reparations, but you can bail out a bank and the insurance company because they're too big to fail, and you can bail out the car industry because they're too big to fail. So you can bail out people who are too big to fail, and these people don't even contribute to the economy like that, because people forget that corporations pay less taxes than individuals. Basically, that's why the middle class is shrinking, and the airplane industry. I appreciate that. So it's like, do you not want these things to be taught? Because you're going to come to find out that who's been weaseling out of paying taxes in this country has been who? What undergirds gentrification? because people forget that when you gentrify an area, they are the banks and the people who gentrify it already have money. Where does their money come from? Just like the Lehman Brothers, even though I think that's defunct now, the Lehman Brothers as a financial institution, they really got their money from slavery. Exactly, the rich. The money comes from those rich people who have money. But also, what happened to the money that people have been paying taxes on in the 30, 40 years prior to getting gentrified in the community that you never saw the streets fixed? You never saw, the lights fixed, the roads paid, not the roads paid. You never seen the fences painted. You never saw the high schools um, maintained and kept. And all of a sudden, when you change the demographics, you just all of a sudden have the money, and people think the money just comes from the rich people that come. No, it comes from basically people holding on to the purse strings of the people who put in taxes in every juncture of town until white people move in, and then they let the purse strings go. You know, right? Ah, truth is, I know it. You doggone right. You doggone right. So this is not what you want to teach. This is not what you want to teach. So it's like, oh, okay. So now it's like, what are we talking about? What are you pushing back against? What are you fighting for? To me, it's absolutely nothing. It's pointless. I don't like like I don't even understand what's the issue. Honestly, like this shouldn't even be a political issue to begin with. But I'm done on this. Like, share, subscribe, or die trying. This is a nice little live. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace. Have a good one.